Two of the traits demonstrated universally among great ball strikers are that they have their weight forward at impact and they lean the shaft forward at impact. And that's because they are able to bend their trail wrist back sufficiently to be able to produce these compressed strikes. Typically, most amateur golfers find this move elusive, instead choosing to cast the club on the downswing, leading to a flipping action which results in fat shots, thin shots, and a massive loss in distance. Today we're going to discuss forward shaft lean at impact with the help of this guy right here. This is the Precision Impact Training Aid, which teaches you how to bend your wrists back in the correct manner and helps you to learn how to maintain that elusive shaft lean through impact. So let's begin by discussing why shaft lean is so important and why it's so elusive for so many of you. When it comes to making good contact when striking the ball from the ground, we know there's two things we need to do. Number one, we need to have our weight forward, and number two, we'd like to have our hands slightly ahead of the ball at impact. And that's because it helps us to create this ideal impact conditions where the club is moving down, the ball is struck first, the ground is struck second. We get that lovely compression off the club face. However, all too often the missing piece in the downswing is how the wrists are uncocking prematurely. So I could still have all my weight forward, which I would prescribe in all shots, having the weight moving to the front foot. But if I start to uncock my wrists too soon, my right wrist here, rather than retaining this bend that's so important, the right wrist begins to flatten out prematurely. The shaft and the lead arm line up too soon, and now the radius of the swing and the club head is going to hit the ground before the ball. And in order to avoid those horrible fat shots that you've experienced, you then start to make other compensations, such as standing up, the early extension, flexing the arms to try and avoid hitting the ground, and then that leads to you missing the ball or topping the ball. So you have this constant cycle of hitting the ground before the ball, thinning or topping the ball, hitting the ground before the ball, thinning and topping the ball. It becomes pretty frustrating. In order to change that and genuinely improve your ball striking alignments, where you're able to achieve the weight forward and the correct shaft forward position and impact, we have to be able to learn how the right wrist bends and moves throughout the swing. Achieving the right amount of that right wrist bend sensation is typically proven very difficult for people to learn to do. The golf swing's happening at a lot of speed, there's a ton of forces acting on the shaft, and it's quite difficult to learn how to do this without some training aid or some help of some sort. Lots of people are able to do this at a slow speed, but as soon as you start to speed things up and the swing gets longer, it typically becomes much harder for you to feel. This Precision Impact Training Aid does just that. It helps to train the correct right wrist bend, and I've seen lots of different training aids in my time. This one was introduced to me recently and it was sent across for me to test. I've really enjoyed working with it, and it's got some elements which I think make it stand out from other similar training aids. The thought and design that's gone into this is pretty significant. It looks quite cumbersome, but actually once it's on your arm, it's fairly comfortable. Just fits on a couple of straps, a couple of finger loops there to help keep everything in place. What you get here is the ability, as you swing back or move your wrist back, to bend the device backwards. And what you may have heard there, as I bend my wrist back, it clicks as I go further and further back with my wrist. So the more I bend my wrist back, the more click I hear, and the more I'm able to maintain that right wrist extension, that bent back right wrist at impact. And what separates this from other similar training aids which try to help you to develop that forward shaft lean is that whilst I'm able to bend my wrist and it keeps it locked in this extension position, it actually has a little ball socket right at the wrist joint here, which still allows me to hinge my wrist up and down. You'll know from previous wrist videos I've done discussing the importance of the downward ulnar deviation and the upward radial deviation, this vertical hinging and unhinging of the wrists. You can still do that, which is necessary, but without sacrificing the importance of this trail wrist extension. So if I take my setup here, I'm going to show you how this thing works. At the beginning of every swing, you can just release the locking mechanism so that the wrist goes back to being in a more or less flat condition at setup. And then as you swing back, you'll start to hear the clicking as the right wrist starts to bend backwards in the backswing. So there's quite a lot of bending going on there. As I come down, it keeps that position for me, so I'm now able to maintain that shaft lean, which is going to lead to those super crispy ball striking. And another super helpful piece that this training aid helps you to do is, as I set my wrist in the backswing and it's now locked in place, as I come down towards the ball, I have to move my body. The turning and the tilting has to work in a way that allows me to reach the ground. I can't be early extending or standing up, because with the right forearm and wrist and shaft angle here, this flying wedge as the golfing machine describes it, this angle has shortened the radius of my swing, meaning if I stand up, I'm gonna top the ball. So it teaches me how to stay down properly, how to open my turns sufficiently, how to stay tilted to the ground appropriately. All of the things that I need to do are made possible because I'm controlling the trail wrist bend. And as far as I'm concerned, all the best training aids allow you to hit balls while wearing it to achieve the sensation that we're looking for. So this one here, I'm going to start out just by, I've got a pitching wedge in my hand, I'm just going to start out by chipping a few into the net in front of me, where I'm working on swinging back to about left arm parallel. I've got the full wrist set in place pretty much, and as I come down, I'm going to feel how that wrist isn't able to unhinge as much. I'm going to punch the balls out into the net, finishing more or less with my trail arm parallel to the ground. So the starting point here would be lead arm parallel to the ground, trail arm parallel to the ground. Such a nice contact. It's even a slight exaggeration for me wearing this training aid. It reminds me of how much I could do with just working on this piece every now and again, just to continue to refine and improve my ball striking. I think for some of you, for many of you, this will be such a new feeling that you're not used to. Starting out small like this is really important. You're just working back, left arm parallel to the ground, getting the audio feedback in the backswing there of the wrist bending, and then once that's in place, it's going ahead and moving your weight forward in the downswing, trying to really compress this ball. So these are traits and pieces that we've discussed a lot over time, but this really might unlock something that you guys have never ever been able to feel before. So audio feedback in the backswing, and then just punch these balls out there. The strike is so good. I mean, as I say, I've only hit 2 shots there, and I can already feel how it's helping my ball striking. Admittedly, this is just a pitching wedge to start with, but even someone like myself who feels pretty comfortable making decent contact, I can really feel the downward strike and the compression that this training aid allows me to have, because it's forcing the shaft to be a little bit more forwards than it would otherwise normally be at impact. And just very quickly on this, there's the point I want to make sure doesn't get lost in translation. All golfers, as they're swinging down, even the best in the world, are losing some of this trail wrist extension. Okay, nobody is swinging this thing and holding on to this shaft angle forever. That is not how it works. Everybody is losing some of this trail wrist extension as we get towards impact, and the shaft and the lead arm line up, hopefully just after impact. But for so many of you, you're not doing this enough, and therefore this device is helping you to exaggerate a sensation, exaggerate this feeling of the right wrist extension is really going to help you. Out of 100 golfers that I teach, 99 of you do not have enough trail wrist extension in your swing. So unless you're that outlier, and you're probably not, this device is going to have some benefit in terms of helping you to train the correct wrist bends in the backswing, and then helping you to maintain the correct wrist bends in the downswing. And once you're comfortable with making those half swings and you've built up a solid foundation, you understand the necessary feels, you've got some good feedback on the contact, now you can go ahead and hit full shots using this device, which again is another reason why I think it's so good. You can work on full swings. This isn't just teaching you how to hit little pitch shots, you can do full swings with it as well. So I've still got my wedge for now. I'm just going to go ahead and hit a couple of full ones, get the audio feedback on the backswing, hit down, and then into the follow through. Okay, so it looks something like this. Really nice strike again. That one's gone a bit further, as you might expect. That was a 120-yard pitching wedge. I think I can get a little bit more out of that. There's no loss of distance here. Okay, you shouldn't be seeing that this is a way to remove power. I'm still hitting the ball full. I'm still getting full distance out of these shots. That one was hit even better than the first one. And another great thing about this is it starts to help you understand. That one's gone 136 yards with a pitching wedge. Another thing this helps you to understand, guys, which I think a lot of you don't understand, you think the power in the swing, for a lot of you, you think the power in the swing comes from rolling these wrists through impact, closing down the club face to try and draw the ball. I've just hit that ball there with this amount of right wrist bend intact. That ball drew, okay, had a little tiny draw to it, and it's got 136 yards. I'm not having to flip or roll this club for power. In fact, the correct way to release this club is maintaining the right wrist bend feel, and then because of this ball socket that I mentioned earlier in the back of the wrist joint here, I'm able to correctly hinge my wrist upwards in the release rather than rolling it in this fashion like this. So that's training good wrist mechanics, not just on the downswing, but also through into the follow through, which is massively important for so many of you. You lose so much of your swing in this follow through because you don't know where your wrist should go. This will help to train good wrist conditions, not only in the backswing, the downswing, but also right here into the follow through. And to finish with here, I'm just going to continue the progression into a longer club. I've now got 7-iron. I'm going to go straight into hitting this full. Of course, you can keep working up with smaller swings to help build your confidence and your ability to deliver the shaft with this right wrist bend and in this forward condition. But I'm going to go ahead and hit full one, just to show you that I can still go ahead and practice with full swings, full power, but get the added benefit of the wrist bend and the ball striking improvement, which is going to lead to more consistency. I actually wish I could play with this thing on. I tell you, that one's absolutely perfect. 171 yard 7-iron landed 2 feet from the pin. It doesn't get any better than that. This training aid tidies up one of the most difficult and complex pieces in the swing. I've spoken at length many times about the wrists, how they work, and I've always looking for ways in which you can train and improve such a complex part of the swing in such a simple and efficient way. I think the guys at Precision Impact may have just found that. So weight forward and trail wrist bend at impact are the 2 factors that unlock the world of more consistent ball striking. If you like the look of this product and you think it's something that could help you, I'll put a link in the description to the website where you can purchase one. If you use the code GRIDLIFE, our friends at Precision Impact are giving you $20 off the cost of one of these training aids. The only piece of bad news is for you southpaws out there, this is only available in right hand at the moment, although I do believe a left hand model is coming soon. Mastering the wrists in the golf swing truly is one of the most challenging pieces for all of us to get right. As I say, I've done many videos on this in the past, and any training aid that I endorse will always be with a view to making the complex subject of training the wrists that little bit more simple. And when you can go ahead and hit full shots while experiencing the sensation that you need to exaggerate that trail wrist bend at impact, I'm 100% on board and think this could really benefit you. If you enjoyed today's video, please make sure you hit that like button and tell me down in the comments if you go ahead and get yourself one of these and what it did for your game. If you already own a Precision Impact, I'd be interested to hear your feedback on the product. I've been using it for a couple of months now and I'm really impressed. I'm always keen to hear what you guys have to say who are using it on a daily basis. And if you're ready to learn more about how the wrists work and the complexity of that motion, simplified down into some small drills and other training aid products that can help you, then you should really go ahead and watch this video next, which discusses the wrist motion in more detail.